Sports Talk. I think it's in the title, at least, that this is an episode of Sports Talk. We're going to talk a little bit more about AEW, more on the positive side of things, though. We're going to be talking about fantasy booking, coming up with potential ideas and where stories may be heading when it comes to AEW. Lots of things going on, lots and lots of talent that nobody expected. And they're just getting them over one at a time. And it's working. It's working. People might not like to admit it, but it's working. So we've got a lot to talk about. And whilst we're doing that, I'm also going to be playing some Fire Promoter here on Fire Pro Wrestling World, which is my favorite wrestling game by far. Sure, the graphics won't match the 2K games, but having seen clips from WWE 2K20, I'm definitely glad that I have this game, you know, and I'm sure the AEW game, once it comes, will be very good as well. So we're going to start with a custom promotion. Oh, no, we're not, because I already have some saved. We're going to start with a brand new promotion. What would be a good name for a company? TGW, I like that. And we can have it stand for True Grit. I like that. True Grit. So True Grit Wrestling. We'll want to go Strong. Strong's my favorite promotion style. It's the easiest to get. Stables, huh? Well, I'll probably end up deleting one or two of them. A babyface promotion. We'll just make a neutral promotion. We'll call them... I don't know. I don't know what a good name for a babyface stable would be. We'll call, there we go, TGG. We'll call them the good guys. Or the good guy. Yeah, fuck it, we'll just make our one guy stable. 666. Yeah, that's a good name for a heel faction. Fuck it. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go for 16 promotions. No. What we'll do now is we'll put in the ready-made ones. Put New Japan back in there. I'd say All Elite is probably third. Then we'll go Impact. And yes, I have Impact and TNA. But this is make-believe, so who really gives that much of a fuck? King's Road. WWE is very much a showman show. We'll have AEW's freestyle. They can be stoic. TNA. I don't want them to be on the same mark as me, so we'll say King's Road. So America. Lots of American factions. You know what? Just for the shits and giggles, I'm gonna make TNA European. Why not? So, if you are new to AEW, or if you have been watching AEW since the press conference, which almost happened a year ago, you will know that AEW have already signed quite a lot of stars. Everyone talks about the next WWE star that's going to be going to AEW. And the fact is, right, they don't need them, right? I mean, I understand why to the casual viewer they need them, because the casual viewer believes that all the stars that are to be made have already been made, so they're unwilling to accept being patient to have their tits popped for someone to gain enough momentum to lead to that, which is a shame. it ties hand in hand with my last video talking about the mentality of wrestling fans and how it's not good. That's a great video. Okay. So the devil, the knight, the divine, the convict. Okay, so we'll keep them 3 as 666. That's alright, we can do that. I can keep them as 666. The good guy can be Matt, seeing as he's called the divine. We'll stick him in no affiliation, which basically means no. So he's the good guy, and they're 666. I like that. That'll do for now. So if you've been following, you know that AEW have a big roster. They have over 70 people signed to the company already. That's pretty impressive, don't you think? And what gets me the most, no one seems to understand that making stars is actually easy. It's not complicated. WWE have really made it out to be a really complicated thing, but the fact is it really isn't. It really, really isn't. And AEW are really proving that. Lots of people love Jungle Boy. People will pick on him for his size, but there's girls that love him because he's a young dude. Yeah, the fact of the matter is that it is that easy, right? If you present someone who's genuine and they prove that they're talented in the ring, that's how you get over. That's why people still watch WWE, because even though the stories suck, they still hire, supposedly, the best wrestlers in the world. So they've got to prove that from time to time. And the stars do. It's what keeps them afloat. AEW are making these stars, and my opinion, they're awesome. And I'm not one of the fans who are like, oh, you should sign more WWE folk, you should sign this, you should sign this. Just let them get on with it, right? And if you still don't like it, don't watch it. Because this is how you build stars. This is how it's done. Right? People will try to argue, they can't. This is how it's done. That's not bad for our first show, actually. Oh, shit. There we go. First show. That's good. I have a lot of sentimental favorites already from AEW. I was a big fan of the Elite because it was the Elite that introduced me to AEW, because obviously they started it. But after the year has passed and I've seen them wrestle, I've seen many other members of the roster wrestle who I didn't know existed before this. These were all guys, most of them introduced to me in May at Double or Nothing. And you know what? Like, that show blew me away. It really did. It really blew me away. And there was guys that I fell in love with instantly during that. I instantly fell in love with Luchasaurus. This is the first match, by the way. Luchasaurus, Hangman Page, well, technically in the Elite, Jimmy Havoc, went nuts to see Tommy Dreamer. I thought that was awesome. and Billy Gunn, with newer stars, obviously introduced a Private Party. At the time, didn't realize they were a tag team. I thought it was just two single dudes, never associated them with each other. But I thought they were both solid. They turned out to be a tag team, and they've unveiled many more people since then. AEW's been great. It's been really great. And to build the amount of stars they have has been epic. I've already said this, but it's true. So, what next? Well, the only thing that we can really have now is time. We can only wait to see where things go, because we don't know. Things are going to skew in an interesting direction for AEW, because their process of doing things is working out your end product, right? So that's what we can hope. They've thought about what's coming already at the end, and they're building towards that. If there's any changes on the way, then I'm sure they'll be prepared for it. But they have a plan, and this is going to be a new concept for wrestling fans to get over. That a wrestling company can actually genuinely have a plan, and that's what AEW is showing us week by week. They're building everyone with all these stories. Some stories are being stretched into next year already. I mean, that's proof, that is golden proof that they are not going to let you down as a fan, that your investment will be paid off with a story that makes sense. Like, that is just something that people need. They need that reassurance, and all you have to do is watch it, and you will see it, and you'll feel it, and you will be a very happy fan. You will be a very happy fan. So, that being said, we've got to be realistic with our fantasy booking. That's how I like to do. I like to do fantasy booking that I can see being possible. I'm not going to say that something like when Jungle Boy beats Chris Jericho next week on Dynamite, when he gets his title shot in 2020, he's going to beat Jericho. Because he won't. Because they're building the Jericho versus Moxley storyline. And that's okay. Because that means, even though you may know the outcome of something, you don't just know the outcome of something. You know it's leading to something. Something might crop up, because it might have something to do with the story. And that's a better prospect. It's okay to be let down if you are intellectually thinking ahead for yourself, because then if you're proved right, it's very satisfying, and you get really satisfied as a fan, because you're like, oh, I saw that coming. It's like when you're watching Game of Thrones or any show. You've got to get invested. I love it. So, fantasy booking. What is the first thing that's worth fantasy booking? Well, right now, as I said, we're in a position where Jericho is away to have a fight with Jungle Boy. Young Bucks have a title match next week. And we have a number one contenders match for the women's world title. Which, in a previous video, I explained that they shouldn't have announced this until next week, because for now, technically, it doesn't make sense. If you're a hardcore fan and you've looked ahead and you know the results, then it makes sense. But anyway, I digress. We'll start with that, because that's an interesting one. Because even if it does make sense with hindsight, it is a strange match. That the fact that the next person who will be getting a title shot at Riho, will either be Dr. Britt Baker again, or Chris Statlander. And Statlander only really started to wrestle for the company about a month ago. Maybe not even that. 2 months, actually. I think that would be fair. She's not been there since the start. But she's been... Yeah, so I'd say a month. She's been in there for the second half of the taping so far. She started off on tag matches in Dark, and then she broke her way into television, where she had a big win. It just seems, at the moment, I'm worried about the booking of Riho. This is the thing. I'm worried about Riho because all the signs are there to suggest that she doesn't want to be there. Now, hear me out. I just feel that ever since that New Japan bought the Joshis in Japan, I think Stardom specifically, that's kind of changed her goals a little bit, because she's a 22-year-old girl, right, wrestling in the USA, but also wrestling in Japan, right? And the reason why she came to Japan, because all the great opportunity that you don't get in Japan. Well, now they've got that platform in Japan. You know, and it's not like she's in the same position as Hikaru Shida, where Shida has moved to the US. You know, that drastically changes things. The fact that she's moved here, she is part of it. She's entwining in the culture. Riho has been very cut off. The only reason Riho has got over is because she's good in the ring. It's because she's small and she's good in the ring. It's a surprise element. People are pleasantly surprised by Riho. They don't support Riho. They just enjoy watching her work. It's a big difference, believe me. Because now that she's proved that that's her mindset, or that's how her booking makes it look. Because it's not like she's just been sitting on the shelf. She has been wrestling in Japan, but she's not been wrestling for AEW as the AEW Women's Champion. It just seems like if you stick her out there against Britt Baker and Chris Statlander, people would turn on her. And I'm starting to get the feeling that this has all gone a little bit wrong for the women's division. And I'm not sure if this is all down to Kylie Ray leaving, because I believe Kylie Ray was originally going to be the face of the AEW's women's division, because it was such a natural gimmick that would have worked. You know, hard to say. It is really hard to say. But at this point, who do I see winning that number one contenders match? Probably Chris Statlander. And this is where it'll change. If Statlander wins against Baker, goes up against Riho, and given what I just said about the possible backlash for Riho, the only way to keep Riho relevant and on top, you know, would be to have her win. Have her pleasantly surprise people again. But at the same time, you're damaging Chris Statlander. Right? And we can't just establish one star at a time with the women's division, because there's not as many. They need to have names. It's far more important that people win a title, that girls win the women's world title over men winning the men's world title. Like Kenny Omega is over, Cody is over, MJF is over, and these guys aren't the champion. Chris Jericho is the champion, but he's not there to get the belt over. He's there just to add prestige to the belt, which is a bit different. In the women's division, they don't have anyone to add prestige to the belt. They've got to create the prestige all by themselves. And with Riho, they created this brilliant little underdog, or she is herself a brilliant little underdog. And that was enough. But now she's not showing up. You know, now she's not showing up, and people are starting to get introduced to other women. And I just feel like, as I said, if Chris Statlander was to lose to Riho, the reaction would be bad. I mean, it would be the only thing, again, to keep Riho relevant, but it would be bad for Chris Statlander and maybe for Riho. Then on the other foot, if Britt Baker beats Chris, again, killing momentum for Statlander. At the same time, Britt Baker will be going up against Riho, and they'll be confronted with a bigger dilemma. Does Britt Baker waste another shot at the title? She lost the Battle Royal. Well, she got cost the Battle Royal at All Out. She then lost her title match against Riho on Dynamite. So surely she can't lose again. Like, surely she can't lose again to Riho. If Britt Baker faces Riho again, surely she has to beat Riho. And then if there is a title rematch, then it's a rubber match. And then you can do whatever you want with that. I don't want that, to be honest. I would rather have Chris Statlander shock everyone and win the title. But I don't see that happening. But there's one thing that makes me believe it might happen. Right? There's one thing. And that's, like I said, if you want to build stars, you've got to give stars prestige, right? Jericho's AEW title is not his first title. He is a 6-time WWE champion. He is a 9-time Intercontinental champion, a 7-time tag champion. Riho is Riho. Chris Statlander is Chris Statlander. Right? So Statlander wins the title, she will have the prestige. And if she goes on an unbeaten run, that's maybe what the women's division needs right now. But everyone keeps pointing out that she's green, and if you don't know what that means, it basically means not a rookie, but inexperienced. You know, not television worthy, as the older guys say. But she never will be if she isn't put in that position. So my first theory for the fantasy booking, which would be best for the division, is that Statlander beat Britt Baker, and then, well, yeah. Okay, you know what? No, that's not how I would book it. If I was the man booking this, I would have it maybe go down to a draw. I would have it maybe come down to a draw. And then the argument to keep Hikaru Shida in there is still possible. Like, this is the thing. Shida's currently the #1 contender, and after the results of next week's Darks, which haven't been put up yet, but basically, Britt Baker and Statlander win their matches on Dark. So this week past, the matches you didn't see, Statlander and Britt Baker got more wins. And if you look at the rankings, that means they are now #1 and potentially #2, maybe #3 for Statlander, but one of those wins came against Hikaru Shida. So, I don't know if we cut Shida completely out of the title picture at this point or what, but I don't know. Like, if I was the booker, I really don't know how I play this off. Maybe I would have a draw between Britt and Chris that protects both of them, and when it comes to the title match, we could maybe have a 3-way, and if there is the argument for Hikaru Shida, a 4-way, a women's fatal 4-way, right, would be great, wouldn't it? It would be really great. And then the winner of that, you know, can eventually have beef with Nyla Rose, and out of those 3 or 4 women, the one that's properly believable, or close to believable for beating Nyla, is Statlander. Yes, Riho's beaten her, but as I said, people were a little bit... They weren't quite sure how to deal with that information. Like, they sort of went, oh, that's great, Riho beat Nyla? How did she do that? And people watch the match, and it's hard, because it wasn't even a matter of how good Riho sells things. It's just, there's a certain point where it becomes 200-pounder powerbombing girl who weighs less than 100 pounds and it looks like it should kill her. Like, that's not down to her being a good worker, that's down to her being very small. And again, not trying to back her into a corner saying she's too small to do anything, but I don't know. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry about that, I'm back. So yeah, we are going to go into quite some depth with this fantasy booking, and we'll get less abroad and cover more time in a minute. But we've got to focus on the important stuff right now, because that will dictate everything that I talk. Sorry, 2 seconds again. Yeah. So this is very important because obviously the results of the recent stuff impacts how I view the future. So I don't know what I would do. Maybe I would play a draw just to protect them a bit longer until the title match. But if I'm going to book, you have been booking things, I believe Chris Statlander is going to win. And I believe she's going to win so that her record becomes 3-0. So she becomes quite intimidating when it comes to the match with Riho. But then I think about Kenny Omega is in charge of the division. And that scares me that Riho is going to be a little bit impervious to defeat when she holds that title. I don't know. Do I think that they would benefit from a title change? Yes. Does the title need to be passed around a lot? No. But I would argue that they kind of need to, because that's how it works. I mean, the WWE Raw women's belts and SmackDown belts, you know, someone didn't get them and then hold them for a long period of time. There was quite a lot of short reigns in between. And they're important, like I said, for building credibility. Like, Riho's current run as AEW Women's Champion, I think is longer than almost every single reign that Sasha Banks has had with the Raw Women's belt. But she's regarded as a 4-time champ, so she's got the prestige, right? And people say the women don't have the prestige in AEW right now, and that's true, because they haven't had years of exposure to build that up, like WWE has. We need to stop comparing them to WWE. It's painful. Comparing them to WWE is painful. But if it was me, right now, I would be going Chris Statlander for the win. Chris Statlander has to beat Britt Baker, because Britt Baker, she's a great character, and the crowd love her. Well, I say love her, they like her. She's not as over as I think everyone thought she would be. And again, maybe this is because a lot of people were actually excited for Kylie Ray and not her. It'll all unfold. But I have Chris Statlander beating Britt Baker. And then, this is the hard part, because I want to say Chris Statlander is going to win the title, but I just get the feeling it's going to be Riho retaining. And hey, you know, maybe that'll work out for the best, maybe it won't. You know, at the end of the day, I am just one of the fans. The next thing, which is very important, is the tag division. And the tag division could become very different next week. This week on Dynamite, we had a number 1 contenders match between the Young Bucks and Proud and Powerful. Main event, Texas Street Fight. Young Bucks won after a pretty damn good match, to be honest, as you'd probably come to expect from them. So they won. They're the #1 contenders to the title. All glory to the Elite. I think the Young Bucks should win this unless there's some fuckery or some distraction from the Inner Circle. You'd expect the Young Bucks to beat SCU. SCU are... I mean, they beat the Lucha Brothers, so Lucha Brothers were capable of beating the Young Bucks. You've really got to consider the booking mentality, because it really does matter to AEW. I just see the Young Bucks winning. You know, we've got Cody saying he's going to take a step back from the title picture, which obviously he is. He's removed himself from ever being the champion. I still think that was an incredibly stupid thing to do. Yeah, I need to loan in one guy. But I mean, is it really that bad if members of the Elite start winning belts? Like, is everyone really going to bitch about, I don't know, what would be a normal thing for people to bitch about? Like, if the Young Bucks win the tag titles next week, like, can we really bitch about that? It's the Young Bucks. You know, we came into this knowing that they are, well, with the recognition of being the best tag team in the world. So surely the best thing to do would be to give them the titles. Yes, it's been a short reign for SCU, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a long run for the Young Bucks. And again, I bring in the sort of mentality that I was talking about for the women's belt. Yes, it doesn't need to be passed around frequently. That's not what I'm saying. But there does need to be, you know, a couple of different winners. That's just how I feel. You know, come Revolution, I would like to think there's been a title change. If any of the title holders is going to have a longer reign, it's got to be Jericho. You know, it's got to be. And even then, right now with the angle with Moxley, you think, well, how's he not going to beat Moxley? Like, sorry, no, the other way around. How is Moxley not going to beat Jericho? You think Moxley's probably going to be the next AEW champion, which puts Kenny Omega on the pedestal for waiting even longer to get a shot at the AEW title, or even just hold the AEW title in general. So I'm just saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with one member of the Elite or one part of the Elite winning something. And it should be the Young Bucks. Yes, Cody was the guy that said this is a revolution. Yes, Kenny Omega is the best bout machine. But being the Elite, the YouTube channel, which is basically what started all this, is the Young Bucks. All of them are accountable for different parts, but the Young Bucks are responsible for such a strong part of that I believe there's nothing wrong with making the Young Bucks champions. We've seen that they can be pinned. They've been pinned quite a few times, 3 or 4 times. So everyone knows that if they're champions, they're not exactly going to be invincible champions. They can lose. The margins in the tag division are close. That's the message they've been trying to send. That Private Party, the Lucha Brothers, that all of these teams could beat the Young Bucks on a good day. And we absolutely need that. That's just fucking awesome. It just puts you on the edge of your seat when it comes to the end of the matches, because you really don't know who's going to win. And I think that's a good aspect to have with the Young Bucks, because there's a sense of impending doom with SCU, because everyone was so hyped about Scorpio Sky as a singles competitor that you think SCU would just maybe revert to Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian just being like the standard bearers of the tag division, and they win some, but the people that beat them are ones that go on for bigger things. So I have the Young Bucks winning the titles next week, but that's very hopeful. My mind is as if I was involved with the company. My mind tells me that SCU are going to retain because there's going to be some nonsense with the Inner Circle. But a man can dream. So I think the Young Bucks are going to win the tag titles. So what we've got as a foundation is we've got Chris Statlander the baker, the dentist baker. Then going on to face Riho. I want her to win that title. I don't think she is. And the Young Bucks title match next week against SCU. I think the Young Bucks will win, but either way, we know we're getting a good match. It's only going to be a good match, and it's going to be a respectful match as well, which will be interesting, because the mutual respect between the Young Bucks and the SCU is so well documented. It's such a known at this point amongst the AEW community that it's only going to be a good fight. It's going to start respectful. It's going to disintegrate into a normal fight, and by the end, everyone will realize they're in it for the titles. It'll be a great match. So I had the Young Bucks winning that. And to the fans who don't listen, Jericho has a match next week, but it is not a title match. Not once has it been said it's a title match. Never said on social media. It was never said out loud on Dynamite. It was never said by Tony Schiavone on AEW Dark. What was said was if he beats Jericho, it would lead to a title shot. But instantly fans went on the internet and went, oh, why is Jungle Boy getting a title shot if he's 0-8? He's not getting a title shot. He's getting a normal match. And you can have a normal match with anyone if you want. If Jericho wants to go up against a guy 0-8, that makes sense. That makes sense for Jericho. That's another, again, part of a video I've said before. Fans really need to change their attitudes with wrestling, because AEW is not the WWE, and that'll become more and more apparent every time they do something different. So I have Jericho beating Jungle Boy because, I don't know, I think you can make Jungle Boy a star, but for different reasons. For example, Darby Allin lost to Chris Jericho, but he still became a star that night. People still chant Darby whenever he goes out there. People cheer him when he shows up. People love Darby Allin, and he lost to Jericho. I think it's similar for Jungle Boy. This is put him in a big match, get him over, a couple of close near falls, but have Jericho win, standing over the young lad who tried. But then people will remember that young lad who tried, and not just because of the fact that he's teaming up with a 6'7" dinosaur. Just AEW's great. Just how can saying shit like this not put a smile on your face? That's what I'm not saying. That's what wrestling's about, but I mean that's what entertainment's about. You just talk about it and it puts a smile on your face. Just the image of it all, and it's very real. So yeah, having said that Jungle Boy will get nowhere with Jericho, it's very safe to say that Moxley is not joining the Inner Circle, despite what was teased. Moxley's not going to join the Inner Circle. We know that, you know that. Even the dumb fans recognize that. So, is this the time though? And well, maybe not now, but I mean, we're talking maybe Revolution. If we're looking at AEW storytelling, Moxley Jericho's going down at Revolution. And that to me seems like Moxley is going to win. I really believe it means Moxley's going to win. But where does that put us next? Right? Because there's a lot to come after that. And that's the fantasy booking that comes next. That's where things are a way to pick up after this long, dragged out start. And we've got plenty of stories going on. MJF, Cody, that's going to be great. That's going to be fantastic. And the fact that we're stretching that out so long is brilliant. Like MJF said that we're going to talk about it in Jacksonville. It's like, that's January. The show's still going to be watchable and full of content up until that point. This is brilliant. We are able to tell stories, keep people in suspense without telling it every week. I mean, we could maybe show like a minute package or 2-minute package to discuss the situation. But isn't that just great that we're not going to get MJF every week struggling to come up with new material to burn the crowd? He's got a couple of weeks to refresh, to do something different. This is great. This is what we need. We need more people to start being put over so we can do this. Because the fact of the matter is, if you're going to become a fan of someone in AEW, like, don't expect them to be shoved down your throat like you would in WWE. The only person that we're seeing week in, week out right now is Chris Jericho, and that's because Jericho is the biggest star in the company, and he's the champion. You know, more shots fired at Riho, why isn't she showing up? And of course, Scorpio Sky is the first man in AEW to reach 10 wins. So, champions got to represent on AEW, and I like that. I like that. Champions represent, and mid-carders or future upper mid-carders, we save for bigger stories. We don't exhaust a decent story every week. We keep it in the balance. We put on good matches during the week. What's to hate? So, that being said, we're coming up to... This would be the pay-per-view at the end of February. As I said, Revolution. I've already got Moxley beating Jericho for the title on that night. If that is indeed what happens. If that match happens, I mean. I've got the Young Bucks winning the titles next week, and I'm going to assume Riho... If we're having the #1 contenders match for Riho's belt next week, I think it's safe to say we're not having the title match in the end of February. So, will she lose it before Revolution? I hope so. But something tells me she won't. Regardless, we get a Revolution, end of February. This is basically where we're fantasy booking up until this point. Are we going to get Cody versus MJF? Probably. But I believe we're going to do this in a way so this isn't the one and only match. This isn't going to be Cody putting MJF over and taking a big step back. Cody is the biggest babyface in AEW. He's got to stay fairly constant on TV for at least a year and a bit, maybe a couple. He's one of the main factors. He needs to be shown off. So the thing with MJF, it's such a deep personal story. It's got to have more than one match. You know, it's got to have more than one match. If Jericho Omega has more than one match, then trust me on saying that I believe that Cody and MJF will have more than one match. But I do believe they will have a match at Revolution, and it will be excellent. It may not be the best technical match of the night, it probably won't, but from a storytelling perspective, Cody is where to go. Cody is story central right now. He's got so much going on. I mean, even if you're not a fan of what his wife Brandy Rhodes is currently doing with Awesome Kong, he's got that going on with his character. He's got the thing with MJF, he's got the thing with Hangman. We've got Marty Scurll, who still hasn't appeared. Will he show up? Because he was close with Cody. And then Darby Allin helping Cody up. Darby Allin still looking for his match against Cody since they had a draw. There's a lot going on with Cody. So for MJF to be a part of that as well is big for MJF. But it also shows you that Cody will deliver that match. And it will be a good match. Right? It might be at worst like a dodgy match or a sketchy match, however you would call it. A scrappy match. That would be a better word. It might be a scrappy match in the end, but you'd hope not. But if it did, it's still going to be good. The fans will still remember it because the MJF story is a big deal. It's a huge deal. And yes, people said MJF turned too soon, but MJF only turned too soon if you became an AEW fan the day AEW came to television. I'm aware there's a lot of fans like that. But as I've said already, I was one of the fans that showed up quite early. I saw the early press conferences and all that. So for me, MJF turning was something that's been brewing for about 9 months, minimum. This story has been told over a long period of time. We've had MJF threatening to kill Dustin. Again, Dynamite fans might not know that. We've had MJF, you know, nice around Cody, dicks to everyone else. That did come across on TV. But they've been doing that a lot longer than 2 months. There's so much more, coming up to 3 months now, actually, you know. there was a lot more to the MJF story, so that is going to last. They are going to stretch that out. If AEW lasts the distance, then in 3-4 years' time, you know, Cody and MJF, if they walk into the same ring or the same, you know, skit as each other, when they lock eyes, the crowd will remember. Because this is one of the stories that resonates with you. Because when you tell a basic story, people remember it. Like, you've got all these complicated stories, you know, in films, you know, filmic, for example. You know, people can tell me the plot to Titanic a lot more easier than people can tell me the plot to The Matrix. You know what I mean? Like, WWE is like trying to understand The Matrix. AEW are taking you on an emotional roller coaster that a child could understand. That's it. And Cody is the roller coaster, as MJF aptly called him. That he takes you for a ride, you watch the match, and you think, he's solid, nothing's gone wrong, and when things go wrong, you just feel for him because he's such a huge babyface, and Cody MJF at Revolution will be superb. And if that is the only match we get, I would be extremely surprised. After this, what else will happen at Revolution? Jericho loses the belt, Cody versus MJF, which I imagine MJF will probably win. Shawn Spears, Joey Janela doesn't seem to be a rivalry that will last to Revolution. I think that's very much a TV thing to pay. It just depends on the storytelling. Because, like I said, I just said Cody is very much immersed in the multi-month, even multi-year storyline telling. That might transcend to the rest of the roster. For now, though, I mean, Joey Spears has technically been going on since Fight for the Fallen, which was June, I believe, June or July. So I mean, we're talking about half a year that they would have been going at each other if they do indeed decide to pay it off at Revolution. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. And we're also now doing this thing where Spears is now trying to join a team with Kip Sabian. Kip Sabian, the leader of the up-and-coming Superbad squad, where he's now with the formerly bad girl, now super bad girl, Penelope Ford. Now, this is what I see. This is a bold one, but if storytelling is as good as they claim it to be in AEW, Shawn Spears and Kip Sabian are forming this team because Tully Blanchard has seen something in Kip Sabian. Kip Sabian is dating the girl that arrived to AEW with Joey Janela. When Janela entered the Battle Royal, Casino Battle Royal, at Double or Nothing, it was Penelope Ford that walked down to the ring with him. Now, I'm not sure if that was a genuine relationship or if they were just planting the seeds, because Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian's current relationship transcends from the ring into real life. It seems like a very real relationship. So I don't know if this was a planned angle all along, that we're now going to have Janela find a tag partner to take on Spears and Sabian because of the whole Superbad squad. I don't know if Spears wants to be associated in a group called that. I'm not saying he joins the Superbad squad, but I'm just saying there's a reason for Joey to be feuding with the guy who's a way to be teamed with the guy he's feuding with, if you can follow that train of thought. Like, it would make sense for Joey to hate Kip as much as he hates Shawn in different ways. So if I was going to say we're going to do a payoff at Revolution, I'm going to say Joey Janela and a teammate, no idea who, versus Kip Sabian and Shawn Spears. A nice little personal tag match that might start the night, might be in the middle, who knows. That's a stretch. That's a stretch. If that's all nonsense, then it'll just be Spears Janela before Revolution. I don't see them stretching out too far. I mean, yeah, they just did the thing with Joey tying Tully up at the ramp, but it just seems that story's more in a position to strike it whilst it's hot. You know, the story's there. Spears and Tully have battered and tortured Joey for being a disrespectful little punk, and Joey just likes to kick back and he says, well, screw you, I'm going to be me. And they've got now this whole thing going, and like I said, Tully being tied up at the top of the ramp. Like, if Spears and Janela were to have a fight in, say, 2 or 3 weeks, to me, that would be the best time to have the match, not in 2 months. Because it's not the same as Cody and MJF, where you can stretch it out, where you can put in all these promos in between, because that's not the same story we're telling. So that's a bit of a question mark for me, but that's the only logical thing that I can come out with that we're going to get Janela versus Spears, but involving other parties as well. This also leads me to believe, having said that the Cody Darby rematch will happen before Revolution as well, because of the MJF match with Cody. Dustin Rhodes and Jake Hager is another one that's been building. And I'm a little worried about this one, I'm not going to lie. Because this will be Hager's first match in AEW, if this is where we're going. We've seen him throw punches. He's still got the strength, he can still do his swagger bomb. But watching him throw punches with everyone, like, if anyone has watched WWE recently and watched the debut of Cain Velasquez, and Cain Velasquez raining down the most fake punches you've ever seen at Brock Lesnar, it feels that way about Hager. Now, I'm a huge AEW fan. Do not think that I am some idiot here. I'm loving AEW more than anything else right now. But Hager feels... it feels like we've waited too long. Same with Wardlow. Like, I get my own point. Like I said, we can only put people people over one at a time, or a tag team at a time. But Wardlow and Hager are telling such similar stories to each other that it's like one of them should have wrestled already, and for the views and for the name, you would expect it to be Hager. Having said that, Wardlow is the lesser known name, so maybe it's Wardlow that should be having dark matches whilst we save up Hager. We shouldn't be saving both, because it just undermines each other. It's like, okay, well, which is the more badass bodyguard? Is it Jake Hager or is it Wardlow? Which one is it? And we're not getting Wardlow versus Jake Hager, because Hager's got the thing with Dustin, and MJF is and Wardlow, sorry, is MJF's bitch for whatever reason. I'm assuming money. Money seems to be the MJF story so far, which is good. Money is a very easy thing to convince people of. I have a lot of money. Okay, it makes sense. You're a dick, right? But Jericho, we know it's because it's a bodyguard. Same principle. See, it's the same principle. So it's kind of hard to get hyped up for that. And Dustin Rhodes, it's really easy to get hyped for Dustin Rhodes because he's a good wrestler. Dude's in his 50s and he can go. And he can put on an emotional match. And he can tell a story. I love Dustin Rhodes. This is one of those things again. This is similar to my opinion about Janela and Spears. Like, Dustin Hager would be better if it was part of a tag match. Like if it was a normal tag match or a 6-man tag, even an 8-man tag, you know, just something between the elite and the inner circle. I just think Hager versus Dustin one-on-one would be such a sluggish match. It would be such a WWE match, you know? And I think that's really bad for AEW, in the sense just two lumbering big guy, and I don't want to use the word lumbering with Dustin Rhodes, right? But the dude is in his 50s and he's 6'5", right? You watch him in the match with the Young Bucks and Kip Sabian and all the rest. The dude is slow, right? He's explosive when you come near him, but he's slow. Hager, unless Hager is like a fucking ninja, right, it's going to be a slow match. It's going to be two guys throwing heavy punches, a couple of submission attempts, or Hager's going to squash him. Or they're going to have a really high-paced 5-minute match with Hager squashing Dustin. Like, it just doesn't sound right. You know, it's a rivalry that makes sense, but I just think, like, why wasn't it Dustin and Sammy Guevara? You know, why wasn't it Kenny Omega and Hager, or Hangman Page and Hager, or Cody and Hager? You know, Cody and Hager would make sense, but Dustin and Hager, I just think wouldn't be a good match. Call me a bad guy, call me an idiot. I don't think it would be a good match. So hopefully I don't see that at Revolution, and if we do have it, it'll be on Dynamite. Maybe at Bash at the Beach, which AEW does indeed have the rights to use. Because WWE have only just started going out and copywriting old WCW and ECW pay-per-view names, because they realized that what they were trying to sue AEW for, they didn't actually own the rights for. They're not as good with paperwork as they think they are, the WWE. I digress. So Dustin and Hager, I don't know where we go with that. So that's where I'm going to leave that. If it does happen, though, we can assume that to be the third match at Revolution. Okay? So, what else, story-wise, is currently being told? We're finding out more and more about Brandy Rhodes' Nightmare Collective. This is easily the least popular skit or angle, gimmick, whatever you want to call it, on Dynamite. It's not getting over, and that's with Awesome Kong and the fact it's Brandy Rhodes, Cody's wife. This was just so weird. You know? Like, it's too similar to the Dark Order. It's a cult. Like, we don't need that. I understand it. I tried to fight the corner for it, right? Originally, when I heard people didn't like it because the Dark Order were doing it, my original reaction was, well, the women's division has to do something. You know, if the women's division has something similar to the men's division, it's not the same thing. You know, like, if there was an Undertaker-like character in the women's division in WWE, then it would be considered a good thing, and they would capitalize on it. You know, they wouldn't point it out as a negative. But I understand, because we're trying to build momentum for new things. And they are, the Dark Order and the Nightmare Collective are both new things. And what both of them have proved is that they're both intergender, because we've seen the female creepers occasionally with the Dark Order. And with the Nightmare Collective, in the recent promo, there's a big bald guy who doesn't turn his head. And I can confirm, what's his name? It's Dr. something, but the bald guy you see in the video is a professional wrestler. He is not a very known professional wrestler. I've looked him up. He's had a couple of matches. He is not a big name at all. Like, if this guy showed up in the ring, you wouldn't go, oh yeah, I know him. Like, that was such a big surprise. They hit him in the video. No one will recognize him. Like, if you thought the reaction for the Butcher and the Blade originally was bad, trust me, when Brandy Rhodes reveals this bald guy, it's going to be silence. Nobody knows who this guy... I don't know who this guy is. I can't find a match of this guy. I can only find photos of him having matches. And he's not a young guy either. I don't get the Nightmare Collective. And that is the only thing that's going wrong with AEW right now. Why we didn't do something of Brandy feeling the effects and feeling the strain of what's happening to her husband, to eventually have Awesome Kong, you know, take her under her wing, and then they do the Nightmare Collective, fair enough. But you don't do that at the same time when the Dark Order are trying to do the exact same thing. You just don't do that. And it's not getting over, and as I said, that'll deal with itself in time. It might pick up, it might not. But the position that the Nightmare Collective's in right now, I really couldn't care less. And the big reveal of the bald guy, like I said, nobody is going to react because nobody knows him. As I said, I've tried my best to get to know him, and I still don't know him. So, Nightmare Collective, I imagine, will have some role at Revolution. Maybe a tag match, maybe Brandy has a one-on-one match. I don't know. But I mean, actually, you know what? Talking about Brandy actually reminds me of something. With all the momentum I've talked about the women so far, you know, I haven't actually talked about the women's belt come Revolution. Because as I said, if they're having the #1 contenders match for the women's division, I don't see them having the women's match for that 2 months later. It's going to be soon. And there's more women with momentum, whether you like her or not. Big Swole is very charismatic. She's very solid in the ring. Hard-hitting moves always go down well with the crowd. We've got Shanna, who's a big draw for sympathy. We've got Nyla Rose, who's a beast. She's obviously had to go back to the bottom of the pile. She's now making her way back up to the top of the pile. We've got Bea Priestley. She's not really gained a lot of momentum right now, which is a shame because Bea Priestley is said to be the most talented. Fuck. Well, just say that you briefly saw her in a photo. Who shared that? I'll say I saw a photo from my dad. I was away to contact A, and then I realized she's still at work. So if you're in, would you be cool with this? Okay. Yeah. But again, you've seen her at work, so you'll know why you never got an answer from her. Right, where was that? Yes, Bea Priestley. One of the best women in the women's division. But will she be in a position to do anything for Revolution? Probably not. However, this is where things get a little bit interesting. Because I believe it may not happen at Revolution, but we may begin to build to it at Evolution. The introduction of the women's tag title belts. Because they've built just as much tag matches for the women's division as they've built singles matches. And we've not really been introduced to any teams. But having said that, I can think of at least two or three off the top of my head that would make sense, including a tag team which is already ready and waiting, which involves, as I just mentioned, Bea Priestley, because she has a genuine tag team with Jamie Hayter, a British lass who she worked with in Japan. She's also with AEW. She might not be permanent with AEW, but she's made 1 or 2 appearances with AEW already. And she's got huge praise for her performances. So I believe we could be looking at either the beginning of a tournament, or perhaps have someone crowned tag champs at Revolution. And that might take the edge off the impending confusion that there seems to be with the singles division. Because surely if there's one way to add character to a division, it's tag teams. Like that's happened with AEW, because single stars have been able to get pushed by beating one half of tag teams. Like we've just seen Alex Reynolds lose. We've seen Lucha Brothers do singles matches. We've seen it was because Matt was injured, but we've seen Nick Jackson do a singles match. Same with Jack Evans from the Hybrid 2. and there's plenty of opportunity for singles matches, see? But the depth and the characters and friendships that can be turned into rivalries stems from tag teams. Tag team, I understand why AEW make it so important, because it really is the foundation to almost everything in a wrestling promotion. Like, yes, it was a big deal when Kofi Kingston re-won the WWE title, but can you imagine how much people wouldn't have cared if there was no such thing as the New Day? Can you imagine how flat Kofi Kingston's win would be if the New Day didn't exist? Tag teams are important. The women's division of AEW needs the tag teams to elevate them to the level that everyone claims that they're not at. They are there, right? I'm sorry, half the women's division that AEW got are technically better than half of the ones in WWE, but no one thinks it, because the ones in WWE you've got to watch for 5 or 6 years and not 5 or 6 shows. Let's have a bit of patience with the women's division, okay? Because it is unfair, right? But the fact is, the lack of the tag team division isn't helping right now. So that's my key factors that I've got right now. I don't know about a mid-card belt either. I think there's a lot of space, obviously, for a mid-card belt. There's a lot of stars that would benefit from a mid-card belt, and the only one I see it being at the moment is a TV title. You know, like someone, as long as you hold the title, you have to compete in a 10-minute match every week on Dynamite. It could be on Dynamite, it could be on Dark, but just that could do so much for someone, you know? Like, if you gave, what would be a great example? Like, say you've got, we've talked about how Moxley is going after Jericho next, and you would assume that Kenny Omega would come after Moxley if Moxley won the AEW title. And again, you would probably expect Kenny Omega to win. But if not, right, if that should all happen, we've got someone else who's already flying under the radar who would benefit hugely from a mid-card title, would elevate the mid-card title right away, and would have so many wins come under his belt. Okay, I'm away to finish. His name is Pac. If you gave Pac a TV title and he went on a 12-13 week winning streak on Dynamite and Dark, he'd be undeniable. And when he drops that title, whoever wins it off him would be a big deal, and they'd get more matches. But yeah, just think about that. Like, Pac could do so much with the title right now, but if he won the AEW title, he wouldn't be able to do quite as much with it, because of the simple fact that there are bigger names than him. Yes, people want him there because he is one of the technically best. That's undeniable. I've seen him live. He's still to this day the best wrestler I've ever seen live. He's phenomenal. Yeah, give the man a title, and then if Hangman wins it, then Hangman's got a title without being undermined. It's a title that Cody can win. It's a title that would elevate anyone. If Scorpio Sky won it, he's now a single star. If Jungle Boy won it, people would be like, oh shit, Jungle Boy won it. If Luchasaurus won it, everyone would go, oh shit, well, there's going to be a dinosaur on TV every week. That's awesome. You know, there's so much good potential out there for AEW. The fantasy booking, it really comes into its own because it's so easy. When you try to focus on WWE, the first bit of this, when we were going over the meticulous wins in order to lead to Revolution, that's what it's like trying to fantasy book WWE throughout the year. It's so difficult because they could just drop someone on a whim, you know, and someone that wasn't even wrestling at the start of the year wins the Royal Rumble. Like the rumor and supposed spoilers that have been released are suggesting that Ronda Rousey is going to win the Royal Rumble. I mean, what the fuck? Like, talk about undermining everything the women's division has done for WWE. Anyway, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, this is how easy the fantasy booking is. Seriously, look at that. I've talked about adding 2 new titles, and it doesn't feel like they would just be unimportant belts. They're things that would add to the story, add to the characters. And this is a roster of over 70 guys. I might release another video soon with more fantasy booking, just talking about matches in general that I really want to see, because there are loads. There's hundreds of matches I want to see already with the current AEW roster without needing to pluck names from WWE. Yes, you can get some dream matches out of it, but let's just create people who deserve to be in a dream match. Let's create the stars first. Then we can have the dream matches. That's how it works. That's at the stage we're at. Let's let it happen, because it really is beautiful. It really is entertaining, and it keeps you at the edge of your feet, and it puts a big smile on your face when you think about it. When you think about someone being a champ, someone other than yourself, and you enjoy it, then that means you've won. So, fantasy book yourselves. I know you'll all love wrestling as much as I do if you've listened to this. Thank you very much. I know a few people have tuned in already. I'm sure to do more Fire Promoter stuff in the future. It's really easy. I hope you enjoy wrestling, and if you do, please watch AEW, because it really will put a big smile on your face. Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon.